started. But Michelle Villagomez, I am the head of marketing over at Engin. Very excited to have Justin Spencer from the Engin team and John Gilbert going through a very fun and awesome call about creating efficiencies in the cannabis space, cost savings, leveraging HR tech in order to do that. John Gilbert, been in the cannabis space for 6 years now, working at the Cannabist to really build out these efficiencies. Justin Spencer from our team. He's head of marketplace and partnerships and brings almost a decade and a half of HR tech and recruitment advertising experience. So between the two of them, we are sure to have a very insightful conversation today. And then, of course, toward the end of this conversation, we'll pull some questions from all of you listeners today. So feel free to chime in on the chat, throw those questions in, and we'll answer them toward the end of this conversation. Now, I don't want to hold us up too much from here. I will pass it along to John and Justin to take it away.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. John, how are you this afternoon?
I'm really good. Thanks. It's good to join you. And Justin, I just want to say, glad to see that we both woke up and chose to wear the corporate uniform of the
A
vest.
hundred, 100% not planned, but I love it. We're on the same wavelength. Well, John, definitely thanks for your time today and excited to kind of dive in here. So yeah, let's jump in. I mean, if you can just give me a little bit of a backstory of, the cannabis, previously Columbia Care, and how you guys really look at HR technologies and found really inefficiencies within your recruiting process.
Yeah, so I think, probably best thing to do is to go back and maybe paint a picture for you where we were, maybe 3, 4 years ago, from about 2018 to, late 2020. We were, a pretty typical MSO at the time. We had, grown from, 100, 150 employees to just under 3,000 in about those 2 years, right? A lot of that
Wow.
was organic growth. A lot of it was through acquisitional growth. And so just a tremendous amount going on and, trying to service, right? We're just trying to figure out how we service all of those individuals, all of our employees and do it well. And we knew that part of that was going to be improving our systems, and we also knew that a lot of it had to do with improving our processes, right? So if you kind of look at those two things in conjunction with one another, that's kind of where we felt like we needed to go. And so, other issues that we were seeing at the time, right, as we brought these acquisitions into our company, particularly in those acquisitional markets, turnover started to tick up. And, so I think in general, right, we're coming from a place of, improvement. How do we improve things? How do we service our company? How do we do it well? And from a recruiting perspective, it was really like, what's recruiting's role in maybe stymieing some of those increasing turnover numbers? How do we do things better? And it might be easy just to say, well, recruiting's at the beginning of the employment life cycle. We don't have much to do with it. But I would sort of disagree with that, and I would say, there were really two things that we wanted to lean on. One was we wanted to find employees and candidates that were specifically interested in joining the cannabis industry, right? So instead of just spraying and praying and trying to get as many candidates as possible, it was really focusing on people that were really interested and really felt strongly about wanting to join the industry. So how do we find those people? How do we go out and get them, where they happen to be? The second piece is more of a process issue, and that was we wanted to empower our hiring managers to take a greater role in the recruiting process earlier on. And we felt like if they did that, they would, build stronger relationships with their future employees. They would be able to sell the company much better than, say, a recruiter probably could, right?
Yeah.
And so, that was really important to us. And so I think those were kind of the two main things that we did. And, through through better technology, through some of those process issues and improvements, we saw a significant drop in turnover, upwards of 65% in some of those markets, which they were really proud of.
Yeah. I mean, turnover, right, can be again from the top of the funnel candidate and then some of the onboarding and where they're dropping off through your acquisitions. I guess, should you elaborate a little bit more? What were some of the deciding factors when you're looking at, different vendors in the tech space to really help your recruiting efforts out?
Yeah, for us, we at the time, right, we were really relying on probably 90% we were relying on one vendor. And, for us, that was costly. It presented a lot of risk to the company, right? Market changes, blackouts for that particular website, things like that. And less diversity of candidates, sort of pulling the same candidates over and over again for the same jobs. And so for us, again, really wanting to find cannabis specific employees, people that were really passionate about that was really important to us. And then, beyond that, like we wanted to solve for, really the kind of consolidation piece. I guess, at the time we were kind of testing out different vendors, Engine being one of them, right? Where, there were these cannabis sort of job boards that were trying to find these candidates for us, and that was fantastic. But we were kind of scrappy at the time, right? So we didn't really have like a strong system in place for job board posting and things like that. And so, if we needed to find somebody on the corporate side or an executive, I would go to LinkedIn and I would do a separate job posting there, and I would put in my credit card. If I wanted to, throw some budget behind a job that we were really having a hard time with on one of our other vendors, I'd have to put my credit card in there. And what this created was it created us having to go to like all of these different places and monitor them and make sure that we're not missing out on candidates. And frankly, what was happening was we were getting a little bit of like job board burnout, right? Because we had to go to Engine and we had to figure out, okay, these 20 people applied today and we have to reach out to them. And then the other thing it did was it sort of decentralized that recruiting piece. We had a strong ATS at the time, and we were unable to share these individual job boards with our hiring managers, who at the time were starting to really take ownership of the recruiting process, and that created a huge problem for us. And so, what we really wanted to do was consolidate those things and drive it all through our ATS. So that's really important to us that we're not, trying to run around with our, heads cut off to try to figure out where all the candidates are.
Yeah, and having multiple hiring managers using different platforms and how you
Right.
tracking spend and how you tracking ROI and
Yeah.
where does that data really live, right? And
Yeah,
how's that being managed?
absolutely. All of the above. And that was a huge issue for us.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other kind of challenges that as your role expanded within the cannabis, and as you guys were growing, what are some other kind of growing pains that you guys saw within, the reliance of a single vendor versus expanding and kind of dipping your toe with Engine and really how did that unfold?
Yeah, so like as I mentioned, right, we were testing a lot of different platforms. We wanted to see, what would work for us, and over time, our relationship with the different vendors changed. And when we were sort of seeing that burnout of using all of these different places to find candidates, we went to some of the vendors. We went to Engine, right, and we said, "Listen, this is our feedback. This is what we need from you. We just can't do this anymore. It's sort of untenable, and it's not meeting our long-term strategic goals as a company,
Mhm.
most importantly." And Sloan and his team and Engine just did an amazing job, right? They listened to us, they took that feedback and said, we can do it better. What if we told you that we could, worked and push everything directly, through your ATS? so that you wouldn't have to go to all these different places. And frankly, Engine was really the only vendor that did that, right? Everybody else was like, either we can't do it, or we're too busy, or you're too small.
Mhm.
So you get a lot of pushback, right? You kind of figure out who's in your corner, and I think that's really important. So that kind of brings me to my next point, which is, when you're evaluating technology and the technology that you want to implement, I really feel like there's four um, critical questions or tests that you need to ask. At least this is how I go about doing it. One is sort of starting with the customer in mind, right? And who's really the customer for us? At least in my opinion, it's the candidate. It's the person
Absolutely.
is applying, and for the cannabis anyway, it's really the hiring managers. The recruiting and the recruiting team. We can kind of get used to anything. We're used to working in ATSs. We're used to working in all different kinds of systems. But how do we make it easy and fluid for our hiring managers to do what they need to do quickly, efficiently, and without any problem? The second is like ease of use, right? So is the platform intuitive? Is there a big impact to business, both on the implementation side and as you're using it? You're going to have to get IT involved. You're going to have to get marketing involved. You're going to have to hire consultants. Is this something that you can do yourself? So, those are really important questions. Third, obviously, is the value or the ROI. So really evaluating, hey, how much does this thing cost? What parts of it are we going to use? Is it really worth it? The pain, because there's always pain involved when you're implementing systems. And then fourthly, and probably most importantly, is how it fits in with the overall corporate strategy, right? You really want to be listening to your operational teams and what they want and what they need from you as a recruiting leader, and then service those needs as best you can. And so if all four of those things line up, then it sounds like you have a winner, right? And in our case, Engine really worked out for us in a lot of those different ways, but there were plenty of other vendors that didn't meet that criteria.
Yeah, and then going back and kind of solving for the turnover, and then really evaluating the return on investment. Can you elaborate a little bit more on, how that type of technology and specific vendor, really emphasizes the return on investment, and how you and the cannabis really looked at that?
Yeah. Well, I tend to be a little bit of a visual learner, so I actually do have a slide on this. So I'm gonna share this if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But just to sort of show you in visual form here, when we first started, like I said, we were really 90% just with one vendor, right? And if we wanted to go outside of that, if we needed to find a pharmacist, say, right, and they weren't on that specific vendor that we were using, maybe they're just not on that job board. They're on a
Right.
pharmacist specific job board. Again, I'd have to kind of like find it. I'd have to take out my credit card. I'd have to, pay for it. Then I'd have to remember to turn it off because, they keep charging you, right? Which is, you get a big
When does it expire?
bill.
How long is this trial
Like
for?
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that's never fun. And so you can see here, but just by using Engine as our agency, you're really able to sort of tap into all of the different major job boards, as well as hey, like, can you go out and find this niche job board for me?
Mhm.
And maybe put some budget behind it. And the nice part here is for us anyway, and it could be different for everybody, is that overall cost, per apply didn't change. In fact, it went down, right? So you're getting a much broader sourcing reach, and you're getting a lot more eyes on your jobs in a lot of different ways, specifically in cannabis specific ways, and it's not costing you anything more. So that's really important for
And
us.
if anything, I mean, it sounds like helping out, because obviously you're not determining, all right, let me go to this job board for this job. Let me go. I have this, new market coming. Let me test out this. It's really kind of lightening the burden off of you, where, not as quite as set it and forget it, but to a degree, letting them take over for you.
Yeah, and frankly, it's been like that since the very beginning, right? I think it's really important to have a close relationship with your vendors, and vendors and customers should be able to talk pretty openly. And just as I give critical feedback to the engine team, like they'll give me
Mhm.
critical feedback too, which is really great. So I feel like we have a really strong partnership. And frankly, like we've gone through vendor implementations, and like you can't get a hold of them. They won't call you back. Once you sign the check, right? Like you don't hear from them, and
Right.
so that's usually like a red flag. And I would say just be careful with those types of situations and sort of go back to those original four questions that I asked.
Yeah. I mean, given cannabis is not immune to the macro climate and even probably more pressure in terms of being constrained on budget, how has it really been effective for you when evaluating ROI when budgets are looking to be cut and inefficiencies are looking to be kind of taken down and you want to be more efficient with your time, with your money, with your resources? Can you kind of walk me through some of that and on the recruiting cost element?
Yeah, I think so for us, right? We were a high volume recruiter. We place a lot of people every year, between 12 and 1,300. So it's a constant engine that needs to continually be stoked. And so like we don't have time for timeouts or downtime or anything like that. And so relying on a vendor that has just so many different ways of finding candidates and bringing them to us, I think is paramount. Cost is always a huge factor, particularly, in cannabis. And I'm a huge value person. So really focusing on the value that vendor or that platform or that technology brings to your company is really important. So, finding technology that works for you, right, and works with your processes. You may have the option or the ability to buy the biggest and best HIRS or ATS. But if it doesn't meet the other criteria, right, like it doesn't fit into the overall corporate strategy, or it doesn't work with ERP implementation that you might be doing, or it's just too painful of change management across the board, then that's not good ROI, right? So
Right.
sometimes figuring out like how to use what you have more effectively or more efficiently, I think goes a really long way for the company. And, we are sort of constantly trying to do that, both, not only on the recruiting side, but through things like onboarding, right? And things like benefits and total rewards and all of those different aspects. So yeah, for us, it's a mix between quality and quantity, right? We have to balance those things. We need a lot of quantity, but we can't skimp on quality. We want the best
Right.
people to work for us, and we need trying to be an employer of choice. So yeah, to highlight that, let me show you another slide here.
Oh, he's got more data. Love it.
More always always data, or always
There
trying
we
to
go.
data, right? So, for us, and again, like what I really like about Engine is that, we implemented this, but it was transparent to the business. The business
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily understand that we're doing these things or are using, the vendor to help us out in these ways to create more quantity as well as quality. But it's sort of just working in the background, and that's what was like really important to me, because we've gone through implementations that have just been, nightmares for the business, and frankly, with all the change management that occurs in cannabis, that can be really tough on a business. But you can
Mm.
see here, really since starting to use Engine, not only has the quantity improved, right? We have a 34% increase, really just year over year, in terms of applications, but our time to fill, so meaning, our quality, who we're finding, has gone down. Part of that is just, more people to choose from, but it's also, our hiring managers are excited, right? They're excited to get into the ATS and see who they have that day, and
Mm.
decided to take ownership of their business, and that's really important, and it's really helped us out. So, this is really the definition of efficiency, right? If you can sort of increase both the X and the Y axis at the same time and maintain a constant budget, it's a win-win, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean to look at it, going back to turnover. So and just kind of helping out the top of the funnel and getting more better quality applications. But I think it's really a testament to you guys as well in the cannabis of taking the initiative afterwards and making sure how are they going to be incentivized? How are we going to eliminate that turnover where someone's not leaving for another 50 cents or a dollar. 8 months later after they get hired. So I think it's really that balance, right? When it comes to, opening up a wider net and getting really targeted. And then, once they're onboarded, what are those processes? What are the policies like? And how do you look to, retain the job seeker, or at that point, right, the employee, and how do you make them, a champion of your company?
Yeah, that's
I,
a great point. And I think that, everybody's got to be pulling on the rope with those sorts of things, right? So it's operations, it's HR. We've been blessed with really fantastic, leadership, both on the operational side, and the HR side that really, think this stuff is important, right? And it's figuring out, things like your employee value proposition, right? And really building those things out and making them meaningful. That's what hopefully keeps people employed, and happy and healthy and engaged. So, but it's certainly a very complex equation, right? And I understand that recruiting is probably a very small part of that. But if everybody along the line, right, whether it's recruiting, onboarding, operations, benefits, et cetera, if we're all pulling on the rope, then each incremental change really affects the company in really large scale ways.
yeah. How does maybe one kind of final question here? What are you thinking about? What is the cannabis thinking about in terms of leaning into 2025 and the advancement of AI and further technology? What's really on the roadmap, and how do you guys think about leveraging AI and different types of technology heading into the new year?
Yeah, I mean, AI is certainly a buzzword, right? It seems like everybody's using it, everybody wants to use it, everybody's putting it into their marketing materials. For me, like I'm really concentrated on filling seats on a day-to-day basis, right? We run a pretty lean organization. It's
Mhm.
doing the blocking and the tackling of the recruiting from a day-to-day perspective. I certainly read about it. I certainly want to be engaged with it. I don't want to miss out on things. We've done some testing with some vendors. I don't quite know that like the technology is there to like really improve operations on a wide scale, right? And that technology tends to be pretty expensive.
Mhm.
So, I think for us, we're trying to use it and say like, trying to get the tertiary benefits of say like an engine, or your larger job boards and things like that, implementing the technology, and then you're sort of by osmosis sort of getting the benefits of that. And certainly, it helps to, have a company like Engine that's sort of like, trying to refine, which jobs are doing well and in which areas and how can we change that and where can we move things around, using the AI that you have. And so that's really what we're doing. But certainly, yeah, like I'm very interested in it, just like everybody else is, and wanting to learn it and use it. I just don't know if I want to like buy it outright yet.
Mhm. Absolutely. Let some of the chips fall in the advancements and see where kind of pricing falls into that. Well, I mean, John, we could sit here and geek out on cost per applications and
Sure.
hires and turnovers all day, which I would love to. But
Right.
if we want to bubble it up to Michelle and see if there's any questions from the audience.
For sure. And you guys, I mean, we love some data. John, I can very much appreciate all of the slides that you showed us. Very insightful. For everybody listening in today, I don't see any questions in the Q&A or the chat. Please feel free to throw some in. I'm sure between Justin, John, and myself, we'd be happy to hear from you and tackle those questions. At least for me, I'll tee up a question here for John. Are there any, and you've touched a little bit on this throughout the conversation, but are there any tech-based initiatives that you tried as a team and just simply missed the mark, and some key learnings there?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few. Like going back 6 years, there were times when we were, say like implementing a new HIRS, but probably might have used the wrong vendor, right? A vendor that was probably more focused on like payroll and things like that, and a lot of promises on building something out for us that would work. And then in general, like what I've seen is I see a lot of people use their HIRS systems, and they implement like a really nice HIRS system, and it's great and it does wonderful things. And it usually has like a recruiting module or an ATS like tacked on there. And whether it's internal pressure or external pressure, mostly external, right? Like use the ATS, right? Like, and I think that's probably one of the areas where, as a recruiting professional, you may have to step back and say, like, is this getting us to our goal, right? Is this making it easier on those customers I talked about, our candidates, and our applicants and our hiring managers, and usually it's not. Usually, like HIRS hiring modules are not that great, right? And that's sort of a general like a general statement. Some might be great that I haven't seen, but and so yeah, I would just say, like, keep your eye on things like that. But yeah, like certainly we've had vendors fall short for us, and that's kind of par for the course. You're going to run into that, and I think you just have to be protective of your company at the end of the day, right? You're getting inundated with like a lot of sales pitches and things like that, and you just have to put the company first, put your customers first, and the business first, and I think, like, you'll be fine. Oh, you're muted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that I 100% agree. There is something to be said about leveraging tech sometimes really is just being discerning, having that keen discernment on when to use the bells and whistles and when to scale back.
Yeah.
That's definitely the way to go. It looks like somebody threw in a question. So John, let's see. How did you get to the point that your hiring managers are looking forward to going through the ATS for potential candidates?
Yeah, well, it's a long road, right? So it's been a long time since we, started sort of moving the needle on that, and having our hiring managers taking ownership of the hiring within their respective groups. And I think for me, what I see is the managers who do a really good job with it, who are excited, to get in there and make their team better and find really great candidates. They also, coincidentally, a lot of times have really good results for other things, right? Like, P&L type results. And I don't think that's a coincidence, right? So I think, like, connecting the success of recruiting and connecting the success of staffing and staffing levels to a KPI, I think is really important. And so, empowering them, right? Letting them know, like, that you own this, and this is something that can really make your organization great. And demonstrate if I'm a manager, like, demonstrate that to me and show me that you can manage this process, and you'll bring really great people into the company, and then get them to the next level. And I think we do a good job of promoting from our internal ranks and moving people along and developing them. And that's really a testament to not only our operational leaders, but having a dedicated learning and development team, which is great for us. And so I think they see that and they get energized. So it's a good question, and it's not easy, but yeah, I think KPIs are really important in this area.
100% agree. Thank you for that. It looks like we got a final question here that I'll field for us. This is pretty general, but where can we see the vacancies that Engine is publishing? You can head over to engine.com, but I'd also urge everybody to head over to Careers in Cannabis. That is one of the largest job boards in the space, and you'll be able to find a lot of listings there, as well. Well, awesome. John, Justin, this has been super insightful. So thank you both for being on today. And to everybody that listened in today, thank you so much for being here. Please feel free to reach out to me, really anyone on the engine team and John as well. If you have any additional questions that come after, after this webinar, if you have any questions on the HR summit that we're hosting with Flower Hire, please reach out as well.